you have to decide that you're going to be happy. Amen. You know the enemy comes to steal, and he wants your joy. He wants your joy. I have made up my mind, and for the last 3 weeks, I made up my mind I'm going to be happy every day, and I'm not going to let nobody take that from me. Amen. Now, I want you to know there have been some things to come up, but I had to remind myself that I committed that I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to stay that way for as long as I can. Amen. And no matter what people say to you, still make up your mind, I'm going to be happy. No matter what people say about you, make up your mind, you're going to be happy. You in the driver's seat on that. Amen. So I asked myself a question the other day when a few things came up. I asked myself, what's new? And there's always something. You just don't know what the something is or going to be. Amen. Hey, Mama.
Thank you, Lord.
I got to moving this morning. I forgot to call you and text you and tell you Happy Mother's Day. That was the first thing I should have done when I woke up and whatnot. Y'all forgive me for. Did I give you the text already? Exodus chapter, it's already up there, chapter 2 and verses 1 to 3. I'm sorry. Before I read this, let me go ahead and let you know. I decided to take a break from last week's sermon and do this. And then next week we'll pick up with the other pieces of it, okay? So from a King James version of the Bible, it reads this. And there went a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw that he was a handsome young boy, the King James Version said a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein and laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And from those few verses this morning, I want to talk about the heart of a mother. Just the heart of a mother. For very, very, very briefly talk about this. I want to, I say to people all the time, I'm not a big Mother's Day, Father's Day kind of preacher. And sometimes even with themes, it's kind of a challenge to me. Being that you don't want to get stuck in traditional kind of sermons in church. You don't want to get stuck in traditional kind of church. Those of you who listen to me sometimes, and it's hard for you to probably understand it, but I struggle. I struggle with the commercialization, the economy boosting of special days. I know there's nothing I can do about it, but I think sometimes we get caught up in trying to do everything one day. we get caught up in trying to do everything one day. Some of us gave out Valentine's candy and we ain't been no good since Valentine. But we did the roses and the candy. Y'all looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm telling you. And they made up and then they fell out again. Then the birthday came and they made up and they fell out again. You know, the summertime is here. They're going to want to travel together and do some, you know, explorations. They're going to make up and they're going to fall out again. I say to people this, and I don't really make a big fuss about Mother's Day and all of this stuff like I used to. I try to do something for Mama all the time so that when my money funny, I ain't got to worry about trying to go do anything because the message is already on the books that when my son can, he does. And, you know, if I miss her birthday, you just celebrate her all the time, you know. So that's just me. You know, I don't go borrow money at Christmas trying to play Santa Claus and stuff like that. I don't do that. Just make it happen all day, every day. All right. So how do we get to this text, to this passage of Scripture? Y'all, and I didn't say anything about Mother's Day. If y'all want to go out with Mama, do it. If y'all want to flood her with flowers, do it. If you want to go buy a car for her, do it. Pay stuff off, do it. I mean, I'm for real. If you want to, you know, do all these extravagant things, do it. Because it's your mama. You can do everything you want to do. But I'm on a budget. And how did we get here? The heart of a mother. I know sometimes feathers get ruffled with me, but it's okay. If I didn't ruffle your feathers, I wouldn't be doing what I'm supposed to do. But I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm going to get myself out the woods. I'm going to say this and I'm going to plug this. If you don't have any money for Mother's Day and you need your money for something else and just so happen a holiday come around, pay your light, water, gas, telephone bills, and mortgages and insurances. Do that. Take care of all that stuff. I'm going to tell you, construction paper, a blank card for 50 cents. Go to Dollar Tree and get something, and you can make stuff happen free. And if you go through all the stuff you got at the house, you'll find something that'll work. I'm telling you, you'll find something that'll work. I mean, like me, I got a couple shirts and probably some pants. I could do a quick garage sale, get $40, $50 quick, and, you know, you ain't got to blow your budget. And sometimes the things that you do free are the most memorable things that are happening. I'm for real. The heart of a mother. I think that God blesses us with hearts that are compassionate and hearts that will somehow make themselves second and not first. If there's a parent in here, mother or father, you realize that when your children were born, it was no longer about you. It was no longer about you. God gave you someone, I almost said something, but you know the gender now. But God gave you someone that changed your life. I think, in my opinion, that what is the highest award a person can get? Anybody know? Presidential award. Well, since y'all don't know and I don't know, I think that if there was an award to be given to anybody, and the highest award, I think it would be to a mother.
That's right.
I think to a mother. To be able to do what no one else is capable of doing. And from the point of, this ties together to the sermon. I'm not just rambling. From the point of conception, being the sacrificial vessel that would be the cargo for a living being. To become conscious that you can't eat all of the Snickers, gummy bears, potato chips, and all the junk food you want, to change consistently your lifestyle to make sure that what you are carrying is healthy. Shows the sacrifice that a human being makes for someone else. That's honorable. But without a heart, it's impossible to take second place. Without a heart, it's impossible to take second place. I think the beauty of life is being able to put someone else in front of you. The beauty of life is being able to put someone else in front of you. Some of you are like my sister. My sister have no kids of her own, but she has custody of my nephew. And if you look at them and you watch her, it's like what Jan does for her kids, our kids, because somebody will take my words, oh, he said this. But what she does for our kids, you see the likeness of a person who did not carry 9 months, but has decided to put someone else in front of them. That's a beautiful thing. Only a person that has a heart can do those kind of things. And I look at the sacrifices that she makes. Just like you make sacrifices. The money you could spend on yourself, you don't. Some of you haven't had a vacation in forever because school supplies and school demands take all your money, just about. I don't know. I'm so glad my children are out of school. I don't think I could fund. It's expensive, man. School got, have you seen the school supply list? Man, I'm like, woo, that's 1 week or a month of salary. The pencils, the crayons, the scissors, the stuff, that's expensive. But they push that forward and deny themselves of liberties in order to make things like that happen. And I don't know, it took me being, can I be transparent? It took me being or becoming an adult to really look back and appreciate all of the things that my mama did for me. Now, she used to come to the school, and I said, man, she ought to be at work. What's she doing up here? And you know how she was checking on Vincent. And she would come and, you know. But then I realized to have somebody who's concerned about your grades and your success and that you're going to make it, man, that's valuable. That's valuable. Someone to go with you, to try to work with you to make sure that you're going to be successful. It's worth it. But not everybody wants you to make it. And the mother takes on the role to say that no matter what the threats are, I want to make sure that my child is protected. In this particular story, there came a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. And this Pharaoh decided in jealousy that because of the Hebrew children multiplying, that he would execute this decree to have all of the male children killed. Deciding that all the male children should be thrown in the river. I want to pause here because I want to plug something, because it's so important that we understand that Pharaoh was afraid that if these male children grew up, they would attach themselves to the other people who he considered to be enemies, and they would overtake his throne. That they would somehow come together and unite in forces, and that these men would use their minds to come up with innovative thoughts and ways to come from under this slavery and become free and do great things in the world. That they would not be content with their predicament. I know this seems kind of camouflaged in language, but I don't know if we really understand why there is such a dark plight against African American males, especially. There's a fear that if William somehow connected to his African heritage and realized that he's more than this limitation that society and others would try to put on him, that he would somehow become empowered and use his mind in innovative wills and thoughts to come from under these burdens and these limitations and strive in life. It's amazing that our lives are so interesting, likened unto that of Proverbs 1:21. I will lift mine eyes unto the hill from whence cometh my help coming from the Lord which made heaven and earth. You know, he that keepeth thee does not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel neither slumbers. It's amazing that at the 3rd grade, they're already determining how many prisons they need. Our lives are so interesting that they pay attention to us to know that at an early age, we have to talk down before they realize that they can stand. I tell people oftentimes, it's a reality that it's a struggle being black in America. But it's especially a struggle to be a black male in America. Y'all ain't got to come with me. I'm going to go with this one anyway. That's why it's so important to have a mother that checkpoints to say, son, can I say like mama used to say, get your lesson. Because if you use your mind, if you empower your mind, if you get your power here, that there's no restraints that people can put on you, that you can mitigate those things that would keep you from excelling in life. You know how to overcome hurdles and obstacles. You learn how to move around blockers and haters. You learn how to engage and employ yourself. When I read this story about Pharaoh and the Hebrew children, he wasn't worried about the girls. Let's go after the boys. Because he knew that they would somehow grow up in strength. They would become leaders of their homes and they would have strong, viable communities. Why you think that there is such a stress, difficulty, seemingly, for men to be men and become heads of homes? The devil knows that if we ever live for God and stand up for God, the same thing that Pharaoh was concerned about, oh, they would grow up and they would get on the other side. The devil knows that if we get on God's side, we could change this world. So there's a decree that's sowing about to kill all of the male children. And this mother, she makes the sacrifice of putting her own life at stake. Because if she's found by the king that she's refusing to give up her boy, the midwives have disagreed with this command. However, Pharaoh is still saying, go into their houses. And if you find them, kill them. I think it's important for us, not just mothers, Philip, but for us to make sure that we cultivate an environment where our boys will grow up to be men and not alternatives. That's important. The world, our community, our people, our women need men, not alternatives. You can say it with me. Preach on, preacher. There's already a shortage of us because we're behind bars, or we're strung out on drugs, or we have addictions that are not healthy, that is preventing us from going into our homes and be what we need to be. We already got it. That we don't need the other alternatives. But I don't know if you see this as a scheme of Pharaoh. I'm using Satan's name as Pharaoh this morning. The reason your young Stephen shouldn't grow up to be a man is because if he ever becomes a man and joins himself to a woman and they have a healthy family, one that goes to church and prays and live lives of righteousness, that the devil know he'll lose. One of the reasons why women are experimenting is because one of the reasons there's a shortage of us. So they turn to each other. Did I say that out loud? Yeah. Because you're looking for comfort. You're looking for compassion. You're looking for attention. So many of us and so few of them will look at each other. And that's why we need mothers to nurture, and realize that there's a plight against my child. To take his life one way or another. I'm not very opinionated about this in public, but do you know to be transgender or to be, I don't want to use the wrong word, but do you know that is almost an execution of a man? Think about it for a moment. I didn't put a sword in his side, but to tell him there's an alternative lifestyle. And him not to live and to be what God has called him to be. I didn't put a sword in his side or a dagger in his heart, but because he's living other than. A mother's sacrifice, a heart to say that this child, I'll put my life at risk. And a lot of people don't know that really that's what parenting is about. You put your life at risk. You give up everything for a child just so that they can have a better chance. This hand is itching. I don't know if that means that somebody's getting ready to bless me real good or not. If that is the palm, I'm stretching my palm. I just have a big palm. If the folk tale is true, somebody's getting ready to bless me real good. Here's what I want you. I don't want you to miss what I'm saying. I wanted to drop this in the text because I wanted us to see that the plot that Pharaoh has that is taken on a different face. And perhaps the church is not where this conversation needs to take place. Is that it's taken on a different face. It's no longer the midwives being commanded to destroy the child or kill the child. Perhaps it's not the soldiers going into the home and to kill the male child. Perhaps it's his identity crisis. I don't know if I'm too low or midways or what, but I'm just trying to help us think just for a moment. I've said all the time that the devil is after your joy, but really he's after your life. He's after your life. Yeah. You know, can y'all see why I don't engage in a lot of conversations? Because I'm kind of thinking a little bit different. And when I tell people who talk about alternative lifestyles that, you know, when you don't live what God purposed you to live as, then somehow that's a life that's destroyed. That's a life that is wasted. A life. Oh, can they do good? Yes. Will they do good? Yes. Can good things come out of those lives? Yes. But to live other than the purpose that God formed us. You know, see, let me go on to point number 2. Point number 2 is that because of the mother's heart, she was willing to put the child at risk. And how can a mother, you say, put a child at risk? Oh, the only way a mother can put a child's life at risk is that she got to trust God with the child's life. What do you mean by that? This mother, Jochebed, her name is not given in Exodus here, but it's on over somewhere else. But it's strange that he wouldn't even give her name. It just says a woman. And usually when I find that the text doesn't give a name, I usually say that you can put a Sally there, a Rashonda there, a Winona there, a certain woman, bear a son. And you know how we talk about Old Testament, that to give a child, and it's a male child, hallelujah, this woman has found favor. I was reading the other day, and I was reading about Hannah, and it was saying that she was barren, in that not only was she barren, but she was praying and asked God for a male child. Because to be able to have a child and to have a male child was a sign of favor. If the woman had a female child, the question in the community was, what sins have she committed? That's a little deep for us this morning. That's just my collateral reading that I was reading about. That the reason why they were pressed for this male child, because you find it with the story with Mary that you are favored among women because she's having a male child. And with Elizabeth, that she has a male child. The first child is a male child that they found favor. But some commentators suggest that in the Old Testament days and New as a transition, that if a woman was incapable or did not give a male child, the question in the community was, what sins have she committed? But for this particular woman who decides that in spite of the decree that is there, I'm going to make the sacrifice of hiding my child from the soldiers, that his life may be lived out fully. She decides that when the child gets older, you read that with me, didn't you? And it said that the child was a goodly child, that the child was a handsome little boy, kind of like I looked when I was about 3 months old and 6 months old, you know. I grew up and things changed. I mean, but when I was a baby, I was precious. I want you to know that. I was precious. So here she is when the baby begins to make sounds that she could no longer muffle. The baby began to have some movements that she could not put restraints on. She decided that this boy growing up is a liability. Even though it's unintentional, he's a liability. Because growing up could be a threat to his own life. I'm trying to make this thing parallel. For your child to grow up, a male child, and make it to 13, 14, and 15. It's a liability. To grow up in a family home, loving Jesus, it's a liability. Satan gets upset when you teach him to say yes ma'am and no ma'am, open doors and close doors, and take boxes and bags and lift for women. There's a target on his back. As mama say, get your lesson and be kind to folk and love everybody. Yeah. So as this baby is growing, his mother takes a risk. She decides, saying that she would take and make him a basket from the straw around the pond, around the river, and take the slime and allow it to be the glue and the thread that will hold this basket together. A mother that decides that because of his life, I want to save his life, I got to push him off some. That's why our children ought not live with us forever. We ought to be willing to put them in a basket and push them off, son. Especially your male children ought not live with you forever. You ought to be willing to put them in a basket and push them off, son. But notice how she pushes him off. She stays close by in case he needs her. She's close by in case he has a question. She's close by in the event that he cries out for her. She's close by. But he needs to be pushed out. I just want to try to keep this thing parallel, you know. A male 40 years old still living with his mama. At least give him a mother-in-law out back. A house out back. You know. But this mother decides that for the safety of my child, I got to take this risk. I want you to know that all along this, I forgot to say this in a mother's sacrifice, is that she stopped praying about clothes and a man in red bottom shoes and Michael Kors stuff. Her prayer changes from herself, and her child becomes her prayer focus. In other words, she's less vain. She's not worried about her makeup as much as she is about her child growing up. Am I okay? Am I okay with what I'm saying? So here is this woman who decides that I'm going to take the resources that God has supplied. I'm going to make a basket and put it together, weld it with slime from the river here. I'm going to push my son off. I stand close by. Not only that, but his sister. This is a blessed family. His sister Miriam, she watches to see what will happen to the child, because she's one of Pharaoh's daughter's servant girls. So she gets to watch and see what's going to happen to her brother. Moses has another brother, or a brother by the name of Aaron. Now you hear these folk in the Bible all the time, Aaron and Miriam and Moses. And he goes down the brink, knowing that mother has pushed him off, that anything is subject to happen if this boy cries. Can you understand what's on her heart right now? That he's out of my hands, but he's not off my heart. Does that sound all right? That he's out of my hands, but he's still on my heart. I can imagine that when she let the basket go, when her reach had gone as far as it could reach, I could imagine her saying, Father, there's my child. Just like you taken care of me, could you take care of him? Don't let him make a noise or a wimp that would cause him to be destroyed. You know, we send these children into the world and we never know what's lurking out there that's ready to snatch them away. But whisper a prayer. God would take care of our children. I'm almost at my close now. For a mother that makes sacrifices and a mother that takes risks, what is the outcome of those kind of mothers? Well, the story goes on and tells us that Pharaoh's daughter was out bathing herself. She had a few girls with her, and here come this basket down the river, and suddenly somebody notices it, and the child makes a noise, and they go and investigate it, and this maid servant brings this Hebrew child to this Egyptian woman, and this baby, being a godly child, a goodly child, touches her heart, but not without encouragement. There's an advocate there that is speaking for the life of this child. I brought that up to say that when mother's reach has gone as far as it can go, when she trusts God, God has an advocate on the other end. I'm not sweating at all, but I'm preaching for real. That there's an advocate on the other end. When we trust God, God will have somebody where we can't be ourselves. I've been in some places in my life, and I thought I was hiding, and somebody asked me the question like, you look like Silas. You Silas, boy. Like you're not supposed to know me. Boy, your mama wouldn't approve of you doing that. Then there was a time when I got a whipping for it. And they weren't even my mama. I got chastised and they weren't even my mama. And you know what my plea was? Don't tell my mama. I take this whipping, I take this chastisement, but please don't tell my mama. Because two things I was going to get a whipping for. One for the deed and the other one for the embarrassment that I caused. And you knew which whipping was going to be the worst? The shame that I brought on my mama. I didn't understand it then, Chris, but those were advocates up the road. I remember being 12th grade, a teacher. I hug her now when I see her. She don't know how much she really changed my life. But my 12th grade English teacher told me one day, you ain't nothing like your brother Michael. Now, y'all know Michael had to be some kind of terrible. You ain't nothing like your brother Michael. I told her very politely, well, it's because I'm not Michael. And y'all know Mike was, he had to be tough if I was nothing like him. And I told her, because I'm not Michael. But she, every week seemed like, if not every day, tried to make me stay the course. I never told her until after I graduated and had probably finished college when I told Miss Ellis, thank you for caring. That was an advocate that Mama had reached so far, but Miss Ellis was the extension of her arm. So what do you mean that God would have an advocate where Mama's hand can't be? Because Pharaoh's daughter was so impressed with this child that she just fell in love with him. And they said, shall we fetch one of the Hebrews' mothers that she may nurse him for you? You know that was trick language right there. That she will nurse him for you? And she said before she realized it, sure, yes, yes, wonderful idea. Let me tell you something. Sometimes we have to know, and I wrote this in a note somewhere, our communication has to be strategic. Stop opening your mouth and say everything that you feel in your feelings. Your words are too valuable for you to waste them. This is just some little scribbles I got on a sheet of paper for myself. Your words are too valuable for you to waste them. You need to be more strategic with your words. Why? Because Proverbs says that a man's belly shall be fully satisfied with the fruit of his mouth. That in our mouth we have the power of life and death. Why are you wasting your words when you can choose strategically what you want to happen? Because what has happened here is that Pharaoh's mother was not just a praying woman, but she was a woman with a plan. She planned for this boy to live. That's why she went to the bushes and that she allowed herself to release him. It was hard to let him go because I can't protect him. He's on the water. I'm not there to cover him because he's on the water. But God is omnipresent. And where I can't be, he is. So when I release him from me, I release him to God. Can't you see what Hannah did when God blessed her with Samuel? She said, God, if you give me a male child, I give him back to you. I release him to you. I go as far as I can go. But where my hands come up short and my heart is still there, I'll put him in your hands. Now, if you ain't going to shout, that was it right there. That was your shouting part. This is how this crazy story ends.
Hallelujah.
They go fetch a Hebrew woman to nurse this child.
Look at God.
And without Pharaoh's daughter knowing it, I don't know what kind of prayer this woman prayed, but they go get the boy's very own mother. When I read that, I said this because I've seen him do it. If you release your children to God, it might seem like they are out of control. It might seem that they're going in dangerous way. It might seem like they've lost their mind. It may have seemed like, God, I've done all that I can do. But if you put them in the hands of God, God has a way of bringing them back, but you got to turn them loose. You got to let them go. If you let them go and give them to God, God has a way of bringing them back to you. Has a way of bringing them back to you. I told y'all this in Bible class the other night, that church had gotten to a place with all of these moves that I was going through, that my son, he's the baby, 24 years old now, decided when I came to Cathedral that I'm through with church. If this is what church is about, y'all can have that. If sitting in the back and listening to what church folks say, y'all can have that. And I didn't push him hard. I just told him that as long as you're in my house, you got to go to church somewhere. I don't care if you go here. I don't care where you go. And sometimes people have a problem with that. I don't care where my family go to church, just as long as they in church. They ain't got to be under me. I ain't discriminating. Y'all hear me? I ain't discriminating. You might not like my preaching style, but if you found somebody that you can grow and learn with, go on over to that church and be over yonder. I don't care, because my thing is I need your soul to be anchored in the Lord. And listen, if it's over there is where you can find your anchor, go ahead and be over there and get your anchor, because where my heart is that you love Jesus just like I love Jesus, and that God will do for you far greater than what he's doing for me. I want God to take you farther than he's taken me. Yeah. It doesn't have to be under my rooftop, but get in somebody's house. You know, sometimes people ask you, you're not bothered that your children don't go to your church? No, they in church. You see how people get stuff and, oh, his children not even following him. Now, they ain't got to follow me. Follow Jesus. Follow Jesus. Let me put a pin right there. Hear the advice that I'm giving you, but follow Jesus. Obey me if you're under my roof, but follow Jesus. Folk make issues out of stuff they don't even know I don't have no issue with. Well, I'm not going to join over there. Well, give your tithe somewhere. And if you ain't joined over there, there's a good place to tithe right here. Pharaoh's command was a plan of destruction. Meant no good. Moses' mother was a praying woman. She was a woman with a plan. And God gave her a promise. Listen at the name. His name is called Moses because we drew him from the water.
Thank you, Lord.
Let me ask you a question. I'm just playing with some conversations I've had in my head. How many children are you willing to save from drowning? The blessings of Pharaoh's mother, I believe she leaped for joy, was to say that I prayed for my child, and God did far gooder to me than what I prayed for. I prayed for my child, and I put my child in God's hand, and God did me gooder than I thought. Look at my God. What did he do? Not only did he save my child, but he brought my child back to my own nursing bosom. I was able to have my hands on him every day. I was able to talk with him, was able to walk with him, was able to tuck him in to bed at night. Look at what God has done for me. If we're not praying mothers, we need to become praying mothers. If we're not planning mothers, we need to be mothers with a plan. But with the plans, you got to realize there's some risk involved. Sometimes mothers, we have to step back in order for them to go forward. Sometimes we just have to let them go and put them in the hands of God. And if you trust God, let me put it this way. Trust God that he'll send them back to you. Trust God that he'll send them back to you. His mother's blessing was that she got to not only see her son's life spared, but she was able to participate in the rearing of his life. And then those things that any mother would be concerned about, Pharaoh's mother, not Moses' mother, watched the benefits of it. Watch this. Watch the story, because it's crazy. He went to the finest school. He enjoyed the luxuries of life. No good thing was withheld from him. God put him in the perfect place for his life. This is how I'm going to close. Every child in this room, you may not understand it today, but where you are planted is the perfect place for God's plan for your life. It may not seem like it. It may not feel like it, but where you are right now is the perfect setup for what God has in store for you. Man, for me, growing up in Rappaport Box 159, Canton, Mississippi, in the country, playing in the dirt, pulling old lard cans. After they finish cooking the Crisco, you take the plastic cover and you drive a nail through the tin cover of it. You run a clothes hanger through it. You fill it up with dirt and rocks, and you tie a string to the hanger, and you run fast as you can, and it sounds like a car running behind you, turning, making all kind of noise. You take tractor tires and old raggedy tires from cars that are worn out, and you put dust in them and say, "Watch my tailpipe smoke," and you roll it and dust coming out on both sides of it. Man, it wasn't that I was riding around on go-karts and I wasn't riding around on tricycles and bicycles, but God knows those experiences, I wouldn't change them for anything, because I had the most fun with the things I had to make for myself. When my bike broke down, not only did I have a bicycle, but I was able to make it into a chopper. Lord have mercy, with the handlebar stretched back. I had the best bike. And guess what they call them today? Custom-made bikes. I've been making bikes a long time ago. Thanks be to God. I was in the perfect setup for what God had planned for my life. I want you to know, it might not feel like it, it might not look like it, but in Mama's house where you are is the best place for you right now, because God knows what he's up to. Lord have mercy, Jesus. I didn't have no silver spoon, but I had a spoon. Y'all don't hear me today. I told somebody this the other day. Mamas do the best that they can. And what you don't know is you got the best that you can have. You got to learn to say thank you for what you got. You got to learn to say thank you for what you're going through. You got to say thank you for every day that you make it. It wasn't until I got grown that I realized. I'm going to tell you this story and I'm done. Tommy, one day, I don't know if it was 12th or 11th grade, Mama was trusting us to go drive ourselves to the doctor. And we had a doctor's appointment. It was a Mercury Cougar, burgundy. My brother Vince and I, y'all know the bad one. My brother Vince and I, Michael is the oldest. I'm the second oldest, then it's Vincent. So Vincent and I was riding down the road, and we were on our way to a doctor's appointment. And at this time, I think they had either 8-track players or cassette players. This had to be around 84, somewhere around 84, 85. Okay. So long story short, whatever it was, we were coming down 43, and I was messing with some music, and the music tape fell in the floorboard, and I tried to retrieve it. And we looked up. I was on the wrong side of the road. Through Vincent's encouragement, I was driving probably a little bit over the speed limit. Y'all know how Vince is. He was influencing me. Maybe a little bit, not much, maybe 2 to 5 miles over. Long story short, I never regained control of the car. Hit an embankment. Mama car ended up with a little turn up in the front. Yeah, a little turn up in the front. Do you know to this day, I didn't get a whipping, a fussing out, a reprimand of any kind for that. The car was drivable, and we just moved on from there. And sometimes I sit and think about the kind of sacrifices that have been made for us. I say us, it was Michael, Vincent, and Gary. A lot of times then, Mama decided not to go fishing and hunting and squirrel chasing or something. Then Felicia came 10 years later. I don't know where that idea came from. But I mean, throwing rocks in the water or something. But then Felicia came along about 10 years later. But anyway, I think about sometimes that incident, how she never said a word. And you learn from those things that it wasn't that she wasn't concerned, but the most important thing that day was my 2 boys are okay. Now, I know she had to be strong. I know what I said, strong. Not to fuss and all that, because she knew that Michael and Vincent could persuade me to do anything, just about. Michael and Vincent could persuade me to do anything. I mean, like misbehaving stuff, that's their influence on me. It was like that. So that was it. But to know that never came up. Sacrifice. A heart that makes sacrifices, a heart that take risks, a heart at the sub point of sacrifice is praying, and the slash of risk is playing. And the outcome is that God would always, He sends back to us what we give up to Him. Can that be a good Mother's Day message today? And that's it. I want to say this in my conclusion. Hold your hand up if you have no biological children. No biological children. Hold your hand up. I want to tip my hat today to you all for the work that you all do. My sister, and I was very protective of my children. I moved to Mississippi from Alabama, and I wouldn't let my children spend a night nowhere hardly. And my sister was the one that spoke up one day and said, you all need a break. I'll take these kids and give y'all a break. And I felt kind of funny, like somebody else got your children. Because my thing always was, these are mine. I brought them here. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm not going to put them on anybody else. And the beauty of Felicia was this. She never told us anything that she and the kids discussed in confidentiality, except that which we needed to know. She stepped in and became that extension for us. No kids of her own. And I used to look at like, this girl is single and young, got her own apartment. What she want to get 3 kids all the time for? But she did that. And I'm just telling you my story about her. When she moved from here to Georgia, my brother Vince, my brother Mike, Vince was like, yeah, you know, Felicia's the kind of person that lives in Georgia but knows everybody, everything. For brothers, that's kind of like, But when she got there, I said, just let it be. What she was for me, she became for them. Those boys, Mike and Darvin, love hanging out at her house. And again, you only got what you needed to know. And she reinforced everything that you said. So some of you would never be the biological. But if it was not for your contribution and not for your help and not for your willingness to help us out, I don't know. We probably wouldn't have fainted, but we would have gotten kind of tired. Yeah. So thank you for your unselfish acts. Let me put it this way. For putting someone else before you. I got to throw this in. For those of you who don't or do have children, they grown, and you go in the second round, whether it's a grandbaby or nieces or nephews, I tip my hat to you. Because you had graduated and got your diploma, but you decided to step in with somebody else and say, I'm going to be a helping hand. And we thank God for the wisdom you have now that you're able to help the younger mothers today. Can't y'all see how working together works best? And that's the way God intended for it to be. So I'm done now. I just wanted to say that. And I didn't want to, you know, since I'm not going to preach about the elephant in the room, and I didn't feel like getting all hot and wet and stuff. So I just figured I'll have this conversation with you to see the parallel. And guys, I want you to understand this now, and I'm done. When I talked about the mother's heart, about the plight that Pharaoh has against the male children, I'm not leaving it to mothers alone to do, because we got to step up and do our part. But I need us to see that just like it was in the book of Exodus, that storyline has not changed. They're after our male children. They're after our male children. They are after our male children. They are after our male children. They are after them. And we need to be able to see that in the text, that it has happened before. Same thing when Jesus came along, what they want to do? Go get all the male children. Anytime they feel that something great will come out of a male child, they say, let's go kill them all. And listen, it's a criminal act for them to shoot us in the head, but to put us in jail, to put us on all kind of drugs and call it they got attention deficit, this, that, and the other, to put us in exceptional ed when we are really gifted. Some of us got some problems, I admit that, but not all of us have problems. To undereducate and underfund education, especially in our areas. You follow what I'm saying? Don't think that it's something just happening. It's Pharaoh's decree again. Because he knows that if our minds get engaged and we become empowered, we'll change the world. Father, we thank you for our time together today. We thank you for